You're listening to the podcast for all of the news, notes, and breakdowns for your Ohio State Buckeyes. This is Sons of the Shoe with Nick Wilson and Spencer German.
It is Sons of the Shoe, Spencer German, Jake Vulinec. Key distinction there. He is not Nick Wilson, if you can't tell. But happy to be back with another episode of Sons of the Shoe after the Buckeyes take down Indiana. Final score 38-15 today. We have so many different things to get to, from some of the trolling that was going on after the game of Curt Cignetti to how the game just played out in its own right, what sort of transpired. Will Howard looking pretty good. The defense looking incredible once again, aside from a few maybe things early on that we'll certainly talk about. But Jake, welcome back in, man. How are you? And your first impressions of Ohio State's win today?
Feeling good. Every time it says Nick Wilson, I feel like it's fat guy on fat guy crime, right? Like you replace one fat guy.
They think you're all just interchangeable. I mean, come on, it's so disrespectful.
Yeah, listen, Nick wears a hat. Like, we're clearly different, okay? No, but doing good. The impression of the win was probably not the hottest start that we wanted, but all in all, things looked good by the end of it. Like, it was bad for the offense to start, bad for the defense to start, but I think once you got about one drive out of the way on either side, the Buckeyes kind of locked in and did what you expected them to.
Yeah, which is kind of funny because that's kind of been the theme of the season, right? Like, they get off to slow starts, and I keep waiting for that to come back to hurt them, right? Like, right now they've played a lot of teams where they're just more talented, and so the slow starts haven't burned them a ton. And I mean, think about the slowest start they got off to this year was at Penn State, where they fell behind 10-0. They throw the pick six, and they still dug themselves out of that hole and went on to win. So, you know, they and I guess that's why you invest the reported $20 million in the roster, because when you have a team that's that good, you can overcome stuff like that, and a bad start or a slow start doesn't just like completely derail a game for you. So no, I think that's a pretty good summation of just kind of like the overarching view on things, because it was a sort of another sluggish start for both sides of the ball. And then by the end of this thing, it was pure domination, it felt like, from Ohio State, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And you felt really good about the end result, which was them pulling away. They win 38-15. And they also obviously had a little bit of a controversial touchdown at the end, which we'll get into a little bit here coming up. But I think it may be a good place to start from an overall perspective is at the quarterback position, because we know how polarizing that position is in general. But like, I thought Will Howard, in a season where I've continued to kind of be critical and kind of expect more from him, I thought this was one of his best games. He had the interception. I know stats wise, maybe he had better numbers, and the Oregon game comes to mind. But this was a game where I felt, because of the types of throws he was making, he made some really tight window throws with guys in his face. There was the two critical, the 3rd and 25 play, and then the 4th and 10 play it was their second drive of the game. And they actually didn't come away with points on it. They got stopped on the goal line by Indiana. And we were all, I think, a little bit nervous after that series, because it was like, oh no, Indiana has a chance to maybe go up like 14-0 here and really take control of this game. But on both those throws, like pinpoint accuracy, the second one in particular, Donovan Jackson got completely deked by the defensive end, and man bearing down on him in his face, and Will Howard delivered like a perfect pass to Carnell Tate for the first down on 4th and 10 of all things. Like, he looked poised today, and he looked like the quarterback that after the Oregon game, I felt like can win you a national championship. And then there was some sort of teetering the last couple games. And I said, I thought the Northwestern game, he played really well as well. But like, the reason that matters to me, Jake, in a game like this, especially top 5 matchup, is like, I'm so worried about the offensive line, which we'll talk about, that I think if you're going to win a national championship, it's going to come down to Will Howard being the guy who takes you there.
Yeah, I thought he looked incredible today. I mean, he moved around really well. A lot of the game, you didn't ask him to sort of step up and make like massive throws.
Yeah.
Like when you did, he showed up in those moments, right? You're not going to have a bad day when it's 4 incompletions. You're 22 and 26. Like, that's pretty good. The one interception, not going to go on to him. Like, that's 100% on Jelani Thurman. Like, you got to come down with that. But all in all, I mean, beginning of the game, he was kind of just asked to make hey, go out there and make the easy throws, sort of hit a lot of your check downs, which was driving me absolutely crazy for the first couple of drives, but figured it out. Again, I think made some really good throws when asked to, but he was pretty much he was game manager today, and not in like the negative sense of it. Like, he hit the open guy for a lot of it, and when you asked him to make a big play, he came through and did it.
Yeah, and I think game manager, because that gets such a negative connotation.
Right.
I think that's probably like a fair assessment of his play today. But I think the point you had at the end there is key. Like, when he had to make the big throws, he looked like more than a game manager. He had a couple like along the sideline that were really pinpoint accuracy. Obviously, he's got such great receivers. They're getting open a lot of the time. And so he's able to find those guys and just kind of take what's given to him. And that's what they're going to ask him to do in this offense quite a bit. But like, when he had to make the big throws, and that's the thing I think I'm alluding to, right, is there was a guy in there today that when he needs to step up and make a big play in a big spot and make a throw in a tight spot, a tight window, he's going to be able to do it. And so that blew me away today. His ability to do that gave me confidence about him going into the Michigan game, going into a potential Big Ten title game. And like, I felt good about his play today. I mean, I think he started 14 of 14 and then had an incompletion and then had the interception off of Thurman's hands. And it was like, obviously not his fault, but yeah, I walked away from this one in a season where I've kind of ridden this a little bit of a wave up and down with him. I felt like for them to win a national championship, they need him to play well. And I walked away from this one feeling like he can be that guy. And I maybe have less doubt about that than I did leaving some of the games more recently that we've seen.
Yeah, and I think you should. And again, like, I think what's really promising from today is probably the fact that he doesn't rely a lot on Jeremiah Smith today. Like, Jeremiah Smith had a really quiet day. He spread the ball around well. Like, we know, obviously, like, the wide receiver core is ridiculous, right? Like, the fact that Carnell Tate is your wide receiver 3 is absolutely absurd. But like, he spread it around well. Nobody really stepped up and had like an insane day and had to make massive plays as a wide receiver other than just getting open on a route, right? Like, it wasn't, hey, I'm tossing a 50-50 ball, go show me something. It was good play design, hit you when you're open. You do everything you ask of. The offense, for the most part, ran pretty solid today. Like, it didn't look explosive. It just looked like a consistent unit.
Well, and we can hit on, I think, at least somewhat here, Carnell Tate, because last couple games for him, he has just emerged as this go-to guy for Howard. And, it's funny, like they talked on the broadcast about how Emeka Egbuka, once he's kind of made a point being like, I want to do more, I want to contribute more, but he's also like super unselfish in the way that he goes about his business. And so I had kind of thought that, like, in recent games, where's he been? Not that I thought he was playing poorly, but just like they haven't used him as much because they haven't had to. But like, they made a point today making him one of the focal points of this offense. And he obviously had the touchdown, which was great. He had 80 yards, led the team in receiving receptions and receiving yards. Carnell Tate was 4 for 68. Jeremiah Smith was 3 for 34. Those are the top 3 guys per usual. But yeah, like, I love the fact that Emeka Egbuka got back involved today, and I continue to love, as I know you wanted to talk about especially, the way that they're utilizing Tate in this offense, because it's kind of been like, you knew in the season started Jeremiah Smith was a freak of nature. They were going to turn to him a lot. You knew what you had in Emeka Egbuka because he's the elder statesman of that group. But Tate has kind of emerged as this incredible third option that I don't want to say out of nowhere, because he was, again, before Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate was another really highly recruited player.
Yeah, you don't get guys on Ohio State's roster that come out of nowhere, right? Right. It's not the 0-star walk-on, right?
Exactly. So it's not like he came out of nowhere, but the fact that he's now emerged is like, man, who do you pick, right? It's pick your poison with this receiving core. It's if you shut down Emeka, well, here's Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate to go off. If you shut down Jeremiah Smith, here's Carnell Tate and Emeka Egbuka to go off. Like, that's been the most encouraging thing about this offense all season, is how those 3 guys have kind of played off of each other, and how just dominant that group can be on any given Saturday.
Yeah, I thought Carnell Tate's day was very underrated. All the stats he put up are in the first quarter. Didn't have a single catch after the first quarter.
And it sucked that drive he had the 2 catches on, they didn't score, because that kind of erased from our memory how great those 2 plays were.
Yeah, but he came through like in the most crucial moments when Will Howard had to find somebody, Carnell Tate was there. Like when the offense was doing nothing, right? When I said I was getting frustrated because they wouldn't throw the ball past the line of scrimmage, it was on those 2 drives. It was like 3 and out, and then up screen pass. I know you tweeted about it. I tweeted about it. Was not working. Like it was terrible. I was losing my mind, wanted to pull my hair out at Chip Kelly. And then once you started to extend it down the field, it was sort of Carnell Tate who had the engine going. He sort of kickstarted everything. And then the offense just seemed like they opened up from there, at least in the passing game.
Yeah, and you bring up the early start where Chip was clearly prioritizing like a lot of behind the line of scrimmage throws. There were some screen passes in there, some bubble routes to Henderson, and none of it was working. Indiana clearly had sort of honed in on the fact that they were going to do those things and were super aggressive and shutting them down. And it made for a 3 and out to start the game. And then they came out the next drive and they ran like a similar play. And it was like, okay, dude, like just put the throws behind the line of scrimmage on the back burner for now. And let's move the ball downfield. And it's infuriating to your point, Jake, because we just laid out like the receivers that this team has. Like they should be able to throw the ball downfield. It's not like their running backs are all they have. And I get wanting to get those guys going. So I too was on Chip Kelly's ass a little bit in the beginning because of that. But what I will say, and the thing that we continue to say about Chip Kelly and the way that he manages these games and kind of navigates them, he knows he has so much talent across this roster that he can just kind of pivot and try different things. And so I was encouraged by the fact that he was tried some things early. It wasn't working. And because of the talent that he has, he found the things that worked, changed things up a little bit, started taking more shots downfield, started trying to use the passing game more. A part of that too was the run game didn't really work very well today. Yet again, late in the game, I know they sort of got it going a little bit, which was, I guess, an encouraging sign moving forward. And we'll get more into that here in a second. But his ability to, even when he knows there's certain weaknesses on this offense or things that aren't working on any given day, and pivot to the next thing and just have different things up his sleeve. And it's the benefit of having so much talent. But like you can see his mind at work throughout the game. And I thought when push came to shove, he ended up calling another excellent game from a play caller standpoint, getting the offense eventually going in the direction that we wanted to see it go.
Yeah, I actually thought it was props up to him and both Jim Knowles, who it felt like, and this will tie a few of our topics that we're probably going to end up hitting on together, but like you come into that game as an offense down Seth McLaughlin, like you're like, okay, what are we going to look? I think the main thing was sort of, hey, let's just make nice, easy throws. Let's establish the run game, get the ball into your star players' hands, and just kind of it was almost a talent takeover, kind of how you got going against Northwestern, and you could rely on that. We knew that wasn't going to be an option, and Indiana kind of showed you that. I think both units got punched in the mouth, realized that sort of the game plan they had early on going in was not going to work, and had to quickly pivot and did it well. Like Jim Knowles in the defense, they were like, hey, we're going to drop back. We're going to play coverage. We're going to trust our guys. First drive did not work. And after that, it was, all right, we're bringing pressure. We have to put Curtis Rourke under pressure.
Well, yeah, we'll get to the defense because it was a very, very good Jim Knowles day today as well, which we'll talk about. But sticking with the offense for maybe the last part of this conversation, which is the offensive line. You guys know we do the Michigan Panic Meter. Jake, I'm putting you on the spot here. Scale of 1 to 10. You walk away, what's concern level with the offensive line today with this first iteration that doesn't include Seth McLaughlin? 10 being like super confident, national championship, here we come, and 1 being, well, we're fucked, for lack of a better phrase.
I don't know. Probably like between a 6 and a 7. Okay. Like maybe I'd be like teetering to a 7 probably, just because I think you saw exactly what I called for and what we wanted to see out of Will Howard, which was a lot of innovative ways to get him out of the pocket, moving.
Yeah, and that's Chip Kelly again. Like the boot plays were great, getting him kind of out of there where you didn't have to worry about being, somebody bearing down on him. I agree.
Yeah, but then where you need to rely on the run game, sort of where we had questions on the interior, that was where they struggled a lot today. And it's not going to get any easier next week going up against Michigan.
Well, and I texted you this during the game. It felt like, and maybe this has been the theme really all season too, like it's kind of felt this way throughout the season. It felt like they struggled to run the ball inside the tackles. Like, are you picking up on this too? Like it feels like when they do more of like your standard like gap scheme blocking, like let's just try to get up the middle of the field. It doesn't work. And then when they do more of like the outside zone where the line's just kind of shifting, that seems to be where they have the most success. And maybe some of that is the skill sets of the two running backs you have. Both those guys, when you get them out in open space like that on the outside, they can just, it's 2 yards in a cloud of dust, and they can break it for a big gain. But it felt like that was the thing that worked, and all the inside stuff didn't work. Now, you can't get away with that against every team. Like, you're going to have to be able to run the ball in between the tackles at some point if you're making a deep playoff run. I'd probably put my concern level at like a 5 point. I'd probably say I'm at like a 5.8. Like, I'm getting close to 6 where I feel like it could still be manageable. But I don't know that I walk away from today like feeling better about the offensive line. Not that I thought I was. You lose another key guy in the middle. You know what my concern level was. I mean, I said the other day, I think this is the thing that derails the national championship hopes. So I don't know that I was expecting to be like blown away, but I still, it's still the thing that I'm the most nervous about moving forward. And I don't know if I'm ever going to feel comfortable with it until I guess they're hoisting a national championship trophy.
I will say the inside run though, like, I feel like a lot of that's a unit, right? You can't really rely on one guy to sort of break open a hole, where when you kind of run outside, it's, hey, the tackle on the outside has to hold his block or be helped by a tight end and chipping, and you get a little help. And then it's, hey, Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, go do your thing. I think when you're running between the tackles, you rely more on multiple guys hitting key blocks. And the unit hasn't worked together at all. And we know that it's a lot of guys sort of being just plugged in random places where they haven't played all year. You're just hoping for the best. I think it's going to look a little better as time goes on, but we're right up against the end of the season here.
Yeah. That's maybe the most concerning part, is like, this happens so late in the year. You don't have a lot of time to like get some momentum building for the group. You know what I'm saying? So that's maybe the toughest part. Like we said, when Josh Simmons went down, you had time to sort of get some momentum with the new look group that you had, and you're not going to get that luxury with this new iteration of it. And maybe Michigan helps us build some confidence if they play well and they do some nice things, but we'll see how that goes. It's no rest for the weary, because you got Michigan and then maybe Oregon on the other side, assuming you win that game. And maybe those are the games that will give me more confidence about it going into the playoff, but we have to wait and see. Let's go to the defense real quick, because like you said, man, Jim Knowles, it felt like that first drive for Indiana was, all right, let's just kind of sit back, see what they're doing. And we see this a lot in football, right? There's the scripted drives for offenses. You're kind of like scouting things out and seeing what they're doing. And then after that, it was like pedal to the metal. He was dialing up the perfect time blitz packages. Cody Simon, have a day. He had the 2.5 sacks today. Was phenomenal. Had the forced fumble as well that led to Ohio State scoring. Like they are actually, I think that was the series that they didn't score on after the fumble. But anyway, but yeah, like Jim Knowles was in his bag the same way Chip Kelly was. And it felt like, I know we have concerns about Igbinosun. I know we have concerns about Burke. It felt like they trust that group to generally do a pretty good job in coverage, where they can then send extra rushers to, disrupt things. And that is going to be massive. That we know they can't get pressure with the front four. We saw it in Oregon.
No.
If they can continue to do this consistently and dial up blitzes at the right time and get that pressure, that is a real tool for this defense moving forward that can help them, again, win a national championship.
Yeah, I thought a lot of what stemmed the pressure, though, was the fact of Davison Igbinosun on the first drive there was easily the target, right? Like, He was getting picked on. They were like, we're going at him no matter what. And you saw overly aggressive, sort of as I tried to talk about a little bit last week. He picks up penalties. I think Joel Klatt on the broadcast mentioned he came in today tied for the most penalties by an individual defensive player. Like, he had multiple in that first drive. I think Jim Knowles sort of sets back and looks at it and goes, okay, I can try to get pressure with my 4 and watch Igbinosun sort of get picked on all day, and we can see if he comes out on top of that matchup. Or I can just see, if I give Rourke no time, how he's going to adjust. And Indiana's offensive line did not handle a blitz for the life of them. Yeah. I mean, it was just different schemes, different packages they were throwing at them, a lot of overloading one side of the line, and they had no answer. They didn't keep a running back. They didn't get creative sort of with the bootlegs like Chip Kelly was. It was basically, hey, we're going to block you.
The Rourke was a sitting duck. Yeah, he was.
And just drop back and hope that you can pass. Like, no, you have to at least throw a running back in there, throw a tight ended chip, roll them out, try to do something different. And it just felt like the Hoosiers had no answer. They were just, we were going to run what we know how to run, and that's that.
Those blitzes are going to be such a tool for this Ohio State team. I'm curious to see like how they deploy them. Again, assuming we get to a Big Ten championship rematch with Oregon, I because that's the game where they struggle the most to get pressure. And so how they utilize that to their advantage will be a thing to keep an eye on. Yeah, I mean, that was massive today. And it's funny, like I felt like Indiana was like moving the ball and they were like really running the ball well. And then like you looked up and they only finished with 83 rushing yards. And most of that came like in the fourth quarter when the game was already well in hand. Like as much as I thought the defense was like had some give to it, they really shut this Indiana team down today. And it was what you were kind of hoping to see, even in a top 5 matchup that you thought could be, somewhat competitive. They proved a point. I also want to, we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up how special teams played a role today. We know like the muff punt snap by Indiana, which gave the Buckeyes a real short field, which they then scored on. And that was right before the half. Like that play almost changed. That play practically changed the game because they were about to punt with like 2 minutes to go in the half. Chance to maybe Ohio State would have to at least drive some length of the field to try to score and take a lead into the half, knowing that Indiana was going to get the ball back to start the second half. And so that definitely like changed the direction of the game. When you give them a short field, then they score, they're up 14-7 at the break. And then obviously I think the play that really blew this thing open and changed the momentum entirely was Caleb Downs' punt return, which, I mean, are there any superlatives to describe this guy? Like just a freak of nature athlete. He fielded it on like 2 hops. Yep. And then spins off of like the first guy there and then broke it. What was it? 70 something yards, 76 yards, something, whatever the hell it was. I mean, that dude is just a phenomenal football player. And that is where we talk about like talent winning. That was just one of those plays where it was like, what are you going to do? Like that's where when Vegas says they have more 5-star recruits than Indiana does. That's where that stuff comes to fruition is a play like that where Caleb Downs just he shows how incredible of a player that he is.
Yeah, I think the most like surprising thing to me off that entire play was just how patient he was. Like we talked about it.
Yeah.
You sort of take it off 2 bounces. Most guys probably just let that go, let the Hoosiers touch it down and bring the offense back out, right? So what is a punt returner? It's like if I can make a play, great, but more importantly, I don't want to mess this up. Like I just want to make sure I get the ball, get the offense on the field. Took it off 2 hops and then patiently sat behind his line, waited for a couple of good blocks, and just touched it down the sideline until he found a moment to cut it back inside. He did like everything perfectly. It wasn't even like, other than the spin move at the beginning, it wasn't, hey, I'm more athletic than you, I'm better than you. It was really just, I'm going to use my vision. I'm going to let my guys work for me up front, and I'll use my speed to get to the hole when it's there. That
spin move, though, gave me flashbacks to Braxton Miller doing that against Virginia Tech all those years ago. I mean, that was awesome. And I like that he scored because I don't know that people forget about him, but because he's a safety, it's like you see him playing well, but he doesn't necessarily get a ton of shine unless he like makes an interception. So to see him make that play, it's just like a reminder of like, man, this is one of the best players Ohio State has ever had come through their program. And I thank the Lord every Saturday when I wake up that he plays for Ohio State and not Alabama anymore. So thanks for leaving, Nick Saban. I guess that's what we got to say from that. Speaking of making statements, because we said the defense made one today, I thought the Buckeyes also made a statement by scoring that late touchdown to make it 38-15. What were your thoughts on that, Jake? Because initially Henderson slid down. They wanted to keep the clock moving, obviously. And then they went for it. They were like, we're going to punch it in and balloon the lead here. It was it's an important score for Indiana because the conversation all week has been, if they keep this thing somewhat close, they probably still have a shot at the playoff. But if they get blown out, maybe that's not the case. And so for them to lose by more almost hurts their chances, obviously. And so what did you think of that decision specifically for Ohio State to kind of run up the score there?
It might be a little speculation on my part. Like I might be jumping to conclusions and making a big leap here. I'll let you decide that. But is that not like, hey, everyone says Ryan Day can't win the big game. And I think actually the narrative going into this was probably even though Ryan Day wins this game, it's not considered winning one of the big games, even though it's a top 5 opponent.
You're not giving him credit for it. You're right.
Yeah, but if you lose it, it's 100% Ryan Day can't win the big game, right? Like it's right back to that. So like he was in a lose-lose situation. But I think part of that's, hey, I'm playing a top 5 team in the country and I have a chance to extend the lead. Sort of an FU moment of, yeah, we could just let the time sort of waste out here. Like Kurt Signetti was not calling a timeout. He was done with it. He was like, all right, they're down at the 1. If they wanted to, they could punch it in. This game's over. We'll let it be done. And I think Ryan Day was sort of, hey, everyone's saying I can't win the big one. I can't make a statement win. I'll extend that up by another 7 points and show you sort of just like, I'm basically dropping my nuts on the table, right? Like that's what it is.
I think you nailed this. Like, I think that's 100% what it was, especially the way Ryan Day, we heard the clip from the Pat McAfee show where Pat McAfee was like, this Indiana team, they're pretty good. And then Ryan Day was just like, we are too, or whatever the hell he said. Like, and then after the game, you know, he was kind of asked about it and like, you know, he was pretty stern about like how he felt his team played today and that they wanted to make a statement. And he said, I think his pregame comments were like, leave no doubt. Well, he was leaving no doubt. And we know in the day and age of the college football playoff committee, style points matter. Not that Ohio State needs them. I mean, they've been the number 2 ranked team this entire time the playoffs been coming, the rankings have been coming out. But yeah, like it felt like that was what he was doing. It was kind of an FU moment. I also thought like there was a lot of trash talk going on to sort of counter, you know, Kurt Signetti's comments and just the kind of brash personality that he is. There was the scoreboard that said like what we basically put on our title slide, Buckeyes win, Google it. And I saw Will Howard kind of did like a throw the cigarette down. It was like a cig and they were like stomping it out. So yeah, there was, I don't know. I don't know that I'm worried that their heads are getting a little bit too big. I think this was just kind of like Indiana came in a little ahead of their a little above their skis because Kurt Signetti is that type of personality. And I do love that for Indiana. And I love that for Kurt Signetti. Like, don't change, be you. But I think that also allowed Ohio State to then kind of be like, listen, we still own the Big Ten and make a little bit of a statement of their own. But I don't know that this, like, I'm not going to sit here and say like, I'm worried about like the smack talk that's going on.
No, I think throughout a football season, especially like a long year where you're coming up on the end of it again, you've gone through some tough weeks, dealt with some injuries. You look for something to play with a little chip on your shoulder.
Yeah.
And Indiana, Kurt Signetti sort of handed it over with Google me. And they kind of just took it and ran with it. I was listening to Will Howard's comments after, and he was like, hey, I mean, you know, we know what he said. We were having fun with it, but it's all respect over to Indiana. It's all respect for Kurt Signetti. I think he's doing a great job. I think it was just in the moment, you kind of,
well,
you live with it. Like you said,
let's face it. Kurt Signetti's the kind of guy who like, he knows what he's doing when he says these things. Like, I think he knows that some of that's going to come with backlash when you lose and you just got to kind of live with it. So, and again, I don't think he's going to change because of that. Like, I think he knows what he's kind of stepping into and that's fine. So I thought it was an interesting statement from the Buckeyes. And honestly, what's funny about all this, all week people spent debating whether or not Indiana should get in or Tennessee should get in as a 5th SEC team. And I think Florida basically resolved that issue, right? Because they beat Ole Miss. Ole Miss ain't getting in now with 3 losses. And so I think Indiana and Tennessee both get in now. Am I fair in saying that? I don't think Indiana's dropping so far that they don't make the playoff anymore.
No, I mean, as long as both the teams clean up the back end of their schedule, I think they're both in now. And it's such a dumb debate in the first place. It's like come on. All you have to do is, if 5 SEC teams is really worth it? No, probably not. Like, we knew Indiana was in the top 5, barring a loss to Ohio State, again, the number 2 team in the country. I don't think they were getting kept out. And Ole Miss just basically does it for you by dropping to a terrible Florida team.
Can never trust Lane Kiffin, man. But yeah, no. If Indiana, with their strength of schedule concerns, was number 5 in the country somehow, I don't think that they dropped so low in the committee's eyes just by this game that they're now out of the top 12. But like I said, I think Florida resolved the problem anyway, because you're definitely not putting a 3-loss SEC team in it, even if it is the SEC. So Indiana's going to get their shot, I would imagine, and that's probably par for the course. They probably deserve that. And that's the whole point of the 12-team playoff anyway. All right, we pivot to our final portion of the show. Like it, love it, leave it. Was something we liked, loved, and we want to leave from this game. Obviously, if you want to participate, you're more than welcome to in the comments, or you can hit us up on Twitter. Our handles are below. I'll start with my like it, and I'm going to throw a shout out to the crowd today. Usually these noon games, we know Ohio State fans haven't been happy with them, are like the wine and cheese crowd. And it's very like sort of muted and not very into it, but they were into it today. Like, that felt like you got the sense that this crowd knew this was a big game and that it was one they really needed to have.
Yeah, they were loud. I mean, the delay of game on Rourke, I mean, I think he was trying to signal to his center that he wanted to snap the ball. I think he was trying to get out there, and you just couldn't hear him. The crowd was absolutely ridiculous today.
Yeah.
It was great. For my like it, I'll go back to Emeka Egbuka. I think that was a performance he puts out that was much needed to sort of silence the where's he at, why is it so quiet kind of conversation that you were talking about. Like, not in a bad way, but it was sort of the conversation of, hey, we know what you can do. Where have you been? I think he walks out and has a pretty good day. And offense, I don't even know that I walked away from this game feeling good about the offense, but I walked away feeling good about him.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it. That brings us to Love It. I want to say Jim Knowles, but I'm going to leave that one on the table if you want it. I'm going to say Caleb Downs. That punt return was awesome. He's an awesome player. He deserved a game where, like, we point out how good of a player he is because he actually scored, and it's a talking point. And again, I'm grateful that Nick Saban retired in time for him to still come to Ohio State. Such a special player, one of the anchors on this defense. And along those lines, like, the defense played phenomenal with him sort of being a focal point of that, or a key piece of that. But yeah, the punt return was great. And I'm glad that he plays for Ohio State because he's a hell of a player.
Yeah, I'll take my leave it or my love it and leave Jim Knowles up there. We both know that we could easily put him in the love, so we'll basically just leave that one up to the fan. Love it. I'm actually going to go the smack talk because you said that, like, it's kind of, it doesn't necessarily rub you the wrong way. I think it's the opposite. You should be fired up going into this week. You should be feeling like you're disrespected and have been disrespected. You have to find extra motivation to play. When you're the number 2 team in the country, it's not easy to feel disrespected. And having your only loss be against the number 1 team in the country, right? You've been respected throughout by just about everyone. Everyone knows you're a national title contender. Now you have a little extra to play for. And going into what's going to be probably the most important week for Ryan Day, because you have to come away from this upcoming game against Michigan with a win. I think just you should carry that into the back half of the year and the playoffs, everything. If you're going to feel disrespected by everybody, keep it riding. Like, I want you to play with that mentality until the year's done.
Well, and like we said, Ryan Day gets criticized all the time for being too soft, not being authentic, all these different things. The fact that he sort of ran up the score by punching that other touchdown in, the fact that his guys are talking a little bit, like, that gets me excited for the Michigan game because it feels like they have this mentality about them that you've been waiting for. You've been waiting to see a team that kind of has this vibrato about them, and that they're going to bring that to the field because we just continue to call Ryan Day's teams finesse teams that aren't tough and can't they can maybe talk the talk, but they can't walk the walk. So they're talking the talk now. They are going to have to walk that walk. Starts next week against Michigan, but I'm okay with a little extra juice kind of being added in here.
What was it that Ryan Day said when he got hired? Was he was going to hang 100 on Michigan?
Yeah, well, he said that privately and it got leaked, but but that has not come to fruition, obviously.
Listen, if he got the chance this year, I think he'd 1,000% take it. Okay, every single opportunity they have to score, I guarantee you, like a situation like what happened with them punching that last touchdown, I think they would do that 4 times over against Michigan.
Well, and I'm gonna be honest, man. Like, the idea that, like, you run up the score nowadays, like, my philosophy on that's changed over time, where it's like, you got to stop it. Like, at some point, you got to stop it. I'm not saying, like, you should be, like, just throwing the ball downfield when you're up, like, 20 points necessarily, or, like, late in the game necessarily. But, like, they ran the football, and then they got to the 1 and then just punched it in. Like, if you don't like it, stop it. That's kind of my philosophy I take on that. All right, that brings us to leave it before we get out of here. I'm going to leave just I don't know. I'm going to leave the O-line because that's the easy thing to do. I truly feel like that group is going to cost this team a title. I hope I'm wrong, but I still need to see more. And the fact that we're now, they're 11-1, 12 games into this thing, and we're still saying that doesn't make me feel good about what lies ahead.
Yeah, my leave it is going to be Dave Sinek-Benosin in the entire secondary because this is where we have the exact
except
same
Caleb
feeling.
Downs, but yeah.
Yeah, he can stay. No, but that's our feeling. Like, the way you feel about the offensive line is how I feel about the secondary. Like, I feel like if anybody's going to cost this team, that's going to be the unit that does it. Because they feel so good at times, and then there's times where I look at them and, again, just shake my head and can't believe what's happening. because they just get torched sometimes. And I think, honestly, if Indiana would have handled the blitz better and actually picked it up, you're looking at a much closer game.
And better teams will do that. So that's the problem.
Oregon specifically, the one that I have in mind. Like,
you say Ohio State, I say Ohio State's offensive line is going to cost them a title. You think the secondary is going to cost them a title, which is very valid because we thought Denzel Burke and Igbinosun were going to be great this year. And Igbinosun is just a penalty machine and Burke just gets burnt half the time. So he should change his name to Denzel Burnt. I know that was a terrible joke. I don't know why I did that. All right, guys, what did you like, love, and what would you leave from Ohio State's win today? Were you okay with Ryan Day running up the score a little bit and adding a little bit of fire to this matchup today and with his team moving forward? Let us know your thoughts at the 92 to the Fan YouTube channel in the comments section. You can also hit us up on Twitter at Spencito_, at Vulinec Jake if you want to jump in on the conversation. Like, follow, subscribe, review the podcast wherever you get your podcast. The 92 to the Fan YouTube channel, the Odyssey app, Apple, Spotify, Apple. If I didn't mention it already, appreciate you guys as always. Can we say, or do we have to wait till tomorrow? Can we say it's Michigan week? Are we there yet?
Oh, it's Michigan week.
It's Michigan week. We're going to have to take all the M's out. I'm going to have to take the M out of my last name next week. We're going to have to do all that fun stuff. So we look forward to previewing the Michigan game with you. I'm actually looking forward to being at the game next week, which is going to be a lot of fun with the stakes attached to it. But either way, we have a lot to discuss leading up to that one, and we will be sure to do it with you on the next episode of Sons of the Shoe. Until then, thank you guys for tuning in, and as always, go Bucks.
Go Bucks, baby.